Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Second Act Actors. I'm your host, Dr. Janet McMorty, and I'm still a medical doctor simultaneously trying to pursue a career in acting. This is episode 60. 60. Oh my goodness. And tomorrow is my 1-year anniversary of podcasting. Holy cow. I cannot believe it's been a year. Thank you so much for listening and supporting this passion project of mine. But oh my gosh. Thank you to my 60 guests for sharing your story, giving your time, being so generous with your energy, and creating this incredible community of second act actors that we've all built together. I so appreciate you. I told you 60th episode was gonna be a big one. My guest this week is Jesse Griffiths. Jesse Griffiths is a very prominent casting director here in Toronto. He casts literally everything. Film, TV, video games. Incredible library of casting he's done. He has a fantastic story. He started his career as an actor and then moved into casting, so he has the literal definition of empathy for us as actors. I hope you enjoy his incredible words of wisdom, his wonderful story, and all this amazing knowledge he's about to give you from the person we need to have the biggest relationship with outside of our agents and ourselves, the casting director. Please enjoy episode 60, Jesse Griffiths. How did you get into casting? How did it all start?
Oh my goodness. I mean, there's like a very long story. There's a very long story with lots of like twists and turns. I feel like I don't want to bore you with that version unless you want to hear it, but it just like, it's too many like this person, then this person, then this person. But the shortened version is I started out as a casting reader. So like reading for auditions when I was still an actor. And I did that for a while, working with Jason Knight, who is a casting director here in Toronto and an all-around wonderful person and great casting director. And their assistant at the time was taking off to explore new endeavors, and he reached out and asked if I wanted to be his assistant. And it was kind of like replacing my Joe job of working in restaurants and bartending and all that. So it was like, oh, it was steady money, it was in the industry, I get to watch a bunch of auditions. So I did that for a while with Jason while still kind of auditioning myself on the side as an actor. And then I was like, oh, I feel like I need to like focus more on my acting, because it was like, it was a job. And I was kind of getting pulled in different directions. And so I stepped away for a little bit and really kind of went back to actively auditioning as an actor, went back to the restaurant, back to bartending, back to late nights, back to all of that. And then kind of like out of the blue, I got an email from Stephanie Gorin, who is another casting director in the city, like very well established, very good at what she does, wonderful woman. And she asked if I wanted to come and be her associate, which for those who don't know, it's like if your assistant is kind of more of an entry-level casting position, and then casting associate is a bit more responsibility. So she was like, come on board, be my associate. And I was like, yes, this is something I want to do. So I was with Stephanie for a number of years, kind of learning how she runs her office, and both she and Jason have different approaches and different techniques and respond to different things. So I kind of learned two very great approaches to casting. And then people started reaching out to me to help cast their, like small shorts or like low budget features. And I was starting to do that, on the side, like on my weekends and evenings. And eventually I was like, it's just really hard to do like a full-time job and then do this other, little gig on the side. So I kind of was like, I'm going to do this. And I stepped away from Stephanie with her complete support, and I started my own company. And yeah, I think we're in like technically year 4 now of operation. So yeah, that's actually the short version. There's a longer version, but that's kind of that's it. Sorry if I was like, I'm just rambling now, but that's how it works.
Not at all. Tell me more about, you were an actor first. How did that all start? Were you always an actor as a kid? How did you grow into that career?
Yeah, it was like, once again, long story, short story. I got into acting probably around grade 5 was when I first started getting into it. And it was really because I had moved to a new city and I didn't know anybody. And the first person I met, his dad was an actor, and he took like acting classes, at the local like drama school after school. And I was like, sure, like I'll give it a shot, and then kind of really liked it. So like did all this, student plays, and then decided to go to an arts high school in Ottawa, Canterbury, which is an incredible program. And I was like, well, I guess we should like just keep rolling with this. And then I applied to formerly Ryerson, now Toronto Metropolitan University, for a theater degree, and studied. Got my BFA there, and then was an actor in Toronto for the better part of like 10 years, kind of doing like film, TV, commercial, theater, regional theater, everything under the sun. Yeah.
I always like asking this question because, again, most of the people I have on this podcast and the people who listen had a career and are now trying to do acting or doing it in conjunction with their other career. And most of us had well-meaning parents, loved ones, guardians when we were young who saw us be the theater kid and then say, it's not really a good career option. You're good at it. That's great. Aren't you adorable? Maybe you should go be, doctor, lawyer, police chief. Yeah. Did you ever feel that from anybody growing up?
I honestly felt like nothing but support from my parents. I think that they were really good about, go do your thing, like figure out what you want, and very, very supportive, of what I wanted to do. There was a brief moment in time where I was going to go to law school, where I had studied the LSATs, and I'd written the LSATs, and I was applying for law school, and then a theater gig came around that just kind of was like, no, like honestly, I was like, I don't think this is my world. I think that I was doing it because I truly wanted to go into law because I thought I could make a difference, but it was definitely the best decision I ever made by not going, because it's not, I'm really happy where I'm now. But my dad was a lawyer and a Crown attorney, and then he retired as a judge. So there was a sense of like, following in his footsteps, but they were nothing but supportive of kind of this endeavor. And they're avid theater goers as well. They love their Shaw and Stratford, and they live in Ottawa and come down to Toronto and seeing shows here or shows at the National Arts Centre. But no, nothing but support from my parents.
What is it about acting and just the industry in general that you love? Like, what drew you to this industry?
Oh, that's a really good question. I think that I am like a natural, like extroverted introvert. Like I like my alone time. That's where I recharge. I like being around people, but I also like my own quiet time. And sometimes I find with like large groups, I can be like, oh, this is a lot. Like there's a lot going on, and I kind of feel like I might lose my place. But with theater, it was and acting, it was the ability, like, oh, there's kind of a manual for how to explore different parts of like myself and my my soul and my emotions, and kind of have some fun doing it. So that was a really big part of it. But the other part is just the people, like the actors and everyone who works in this like creative industry are just like so inspiring, so passionate, so intelligent. Like those are the people that I want to surround myself with, which is also why going to law school is probably a good idea that I didn't do that. No shade towards lawyers, but like I feel like these are kind of my people. Often people ask, like, do you regret it? Like, do you miss acting? Would you ever go back to it? And the honest answer is like I love what I'm doing right now, and I feel like when you know that you're on the right path of what you're meant to do, like in this moment, 10 years, who knows? But in this moment, I feel like I'm on the right path. There's a bit of ease and contentment. But the one thing I do miss is like I miss doing theater. Like I miss spending large chunks of time with new people, sometimes in a new city, like exploring, making different connections, and spending like really quality time in like a creative setting. I miss that, but I don't miss everything else. If that's fair? Yeah.
Absolutely. And I like what you said, and it resonates with me, and I know other people, about like the energy of, not just the people, but just like the industry in general and being creative. I think that's a big vein that's traveled through all these episodes that I've done so far about what was missing from a career prior that they were realizing they had kind of in childhood, was that the energy of those creative people, but also the just creativity in general, and feeling like they weren't doing that or aren't doing that in their job and they miss it. And I love what you said about the sense of ease, because there's that unease when you know you're not on the right path, but you don't really know until you know what ease feels like. So yeah, that's interesting. That's exciting, I think, to feel that.
And there was a part of me that was, it's actors are so tenacious and so hardworking, and like I just have so much respect for them. But what I was kind of coming to terms with when I decided to make that transition is like, oh, am I quitting? Am I a failure? Am I letting people down? Like those things were coming into my head, and I just realized I had to make the choice for myself, and try something new, because I had done this thing for so long, relatively long period at that point, that it's all I knew. So there was also like fear and trepidation about, trying something new. But when I did it, and then, when I kind of told people this is what I was going to be doing, honestly, the outpouring of support was overwhelming. Like it was just like people were like, yeah, that sounds right. This is what you should do. And I was like, oh, like, of course, like my friend's not going to judge me for trying something new. The acting community is not going to be mad because I left. I thought, like, good, one less person to worry about. But it was truly nothing but like support. And still, I feel so supported by the acting community, mainly here in Toronto.
And I think Toronto being, I'm going to say, a bit unique, and correct me if I'm wrong, because I know you've been in Toronto longer than I have. It's such a new industry compared to like a juggernaut, LA, New York. So there has to be a feeling of support. There has to be a feeling, and there has to be actual support, I think, for the actors within Toronto and everyone else in the industry, casting, directing, writing, whatever. Because if we don't support each other, and this sounds very woo, but if we don't support each other, like we won't mature from the baby industry we are to what we want to be. I would assume like an LA with a star system and all that stuff. You can't make it as an industry unless you all are together being like, yeah, let's support each other doing this.
Yeah, I mean, like the arts community in Toronto runs like deep and long, and like a historic amounts of work have been done here. And I actually think that we're becoming a juggernaut. Like right now, the amount of work that's happening in this city, in terms of like support, like it's actually becoming difficult to support the amount of work being done here, which is like in a great way. It's why we're expanding like studio space. It's why we're trying to draw, great crew. But like the talent in Toronto can rival any other major city. And I think we're just kind of like, I think we're just kind of at the precipice of really seeing what our city can do on the global stage. But it's, as I said, Toronto has some of the best actors in the world.
Damn right.
Yeah.
So I'm seeing there's a parallel between. I'm going to bring in my agent a little bit here because I interviewed her. So Maya Ritter is my agent from Ritter Talent.
Yeah.
She was an actor prior to becoming an agent.
Mm-hmm.
Similar story to yourself. So I think you have a unique perspective because you can literally feel empathy for actors. Tell me about now in casting how that works. Looking at these actors being like, I know what you're going through. I'm here for you. Tell me about that change.
I mean, it's, when I first started, I was just very hyper aware of like the audition process and how we treat actors in that process, from choosing the audition material to giving them enough time to actually prepare that material, to making sure they have enough time in the room to feel their time is valued and they're valued and heard and seen. I think that I think and feel that my experience as an actor has allowed me, has given me the vocabulary to kind of properly communicate things that, in an audition setting that I might want to try. And has allowed me kind of see who I respond to as performers in terms of really great performances or performances that might need a little, spit shine just to kind of get them up there. That being said, what's been difficult is COVID. It's been Zoom sessions. It's been self-tapes. So part of the fun job as a casting director is seeing actors every day and working with them and feeding off their energy. And it's a collaborative process. So that's been really difficult to make that shift where, we might not be able to be as supportive in the room or give the redirects we want because we don't have that opportunity to do so. So, but I do remember going and having auditions as an actor. I'm like, they're not even looking at me, or it's what are we doing here? And that's not all casting directors. I think in general the casting community is very supportive here in Toronto and truly wants the best. But it is always hard as an actor when your job is to go and audition and face rejection day after day. What other profession does that? And it's hard. So those are things I always kind of take in mind and try to remind myself when doing a Zoom session or having self-tapes or, when we do get in-person auditions. But yeah, it's important that we truly are there to help each other. It's not the casting director trying to give someone an opportunity. We've heard this before, but we are desperate for good actors because good actors make us look good. So, when someone comes in and crushes it, it's the best thing. When you have 5 people who crush it, you're like, awesome. When you have a full day of auditions, I don't know if we found the person, that's terrifying, because it is, a results-driven industry, and you want to make sure you're putting, your best foot forward by putting the best actors forward.
And I think that was something that I know I didn't know because I didn't go to film or theater school about casting. And I know you probably hear this all the time and have probably preached this about how, casting directors are on your side, right? We want to find the best person. We're here to support you. But there's a weird division between casting and actor, and there's the actor for some reason feels like it's a fight. And so again, as somebody who is learning about this industry, and that's why I like doing these episodes with industry people like yourself, is because most of my listeners are still learning about the industry. So can you take me through a day, your day in casting? What does that look like? What do you do?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I think that what I love about it is every day truly is really different. So I work with a fantastic team, and I won't go into my personal morning routine, but essentially before their day starts at 10, I'm going through all their emails. We have a great kind of project management software that allows us to delegate tasks. So I'm going through and seeing what needs to be done for the day. And, a lot of the job is logistics and scheduling and making sure the right people are in the right place at the right time. But for example, right now we have maybe 5 or 6 projects on the go, and they're all at various stages of the casting process. So sometimes it's reading scripts and prepping a breakdown. Sometimes it's prepping the sides or prepping offers for approval to get approved by our producer before they go out, or negotiating contracts with actors we do want to book, requesting self-tapes, watching self-tapes, following up on all the emails that are coming in with requests for scheduling changes. I'm just like looking at my inbox, like ticking up as we talk. It's all these things that are kind of coming in. But there's no typical day in casting at all. Do you want more information? Did that answer your question?
It did. Okay. Yeah, because my next question is, how can we make your job easier?
Well, that's a good question. When we put out auditions, we try and be like very clear with what we might want in terms of like a slate. So like following the basic instructions is the best thing. If we put it in there, it's because we need it for some reason. When we do a cross-country search for video game casting, and we say we want name, height, and location, and they just give us their name, that means we have to go track down their height and location, which, if we're putting out lots of auditions, it's just a lot of extra work. So just like the basics, like basic stuff like that. But also like on the creative side, how to make it easier is like, show me who you are as an actor. I think that a lot, and I've said this many times before, but I feel like often people show me what they think we want to see as casting directors. And then that doesn't allow me to see who you are as a performer. And so, casting and auditioning, it's like a long game. Like you are playing a long game. And so while you might be able to like fake one bias by pretending to be someone you're not for your first audition, like that's fine and you might book it. But if you want to play the long game, like over time, every time I audition you, show me something new. Show me a different part of yourself. Show me a different color of yourself so that I get a better sense of what you can do as a performer, as an artist. And then the spectrum for possibilities just like explodes because like I have a better sense of who you are. So that's something you can do to make our jobs easier. Get your self-tapes in on time. Communicate with your agent if you're booking out somewhere. Like those things. Like if you're taking off for vacation, which you should, I think everyone needs vacation 100%, but just let us know. Let us know.
That's good advice.
What else? Don't just cancel a self-tape because you can't make the deadline. Ask for an extension, personally. We'll either say yes or no, but ask. Yeah, if life comes up, if there's an emergency, if you're not able to do it, if you have kids, if you have a job, if you're out of town, just ask for an extension and we'll say yes or no. That's me. I should have prefaced this entire conversation is just how we operate, and I don't want to speak for all casting directors, but I feel that's a good rule of thumb.
Yeah. Well, and I think something I'm curious about, you mentioned, because you've had different mentors throughout your career, and you had mentioned how each casting director works differently, and you get to see, you kind of get to pick and choose what you like from each casting director. Can you tell me a bit more about that? Like, not into specifics about like this casting director is like this, but I didn't really realize how different each casting director is. Like, and I know it's probably based on project, but yeah, tell me more about that, the different variations.
Yeah, I think that without going to like specifics, I think like the two major things that I saw, one is just like workflow, like in terms of information, emails, like the actual like nuts and bolts of running an office. And I'm not going to go into specifics just out of like consideration for my two mentors, but they both just logistically operate different, just in terms of keeping like just the housekeeping of the office. They operated very differently, and I kind of picked and chose the things I was like, oh, I like this. This works for me. Just how my brain actually kind of processes large amounts of information. I'm being intentionally vague because I don't want to give away how they do their thing, but that was important for me in terms of we're dealing with lots of information, tight timelines, deadlines, calls, emails, clients. It's important to stay organized. So organizational tools were one thing that it was a takeaway for me. And then, I think that, and I don't think I'm speaking out of turn, but, every casting director, if they're good with which, Jason and Stephanie are very good at what they do, they can find good talent and they can seek it out. And their ability to work with actors was different but incredible, in terms of like giving notes and putting them at ease and working with them. And also, I could see like who were the actors that they were naturally drawn to. Just that they would think of these actors when we're casting something that might not have been submitted. Like their repertoire of Toronto talent is like similar but also different in terms of like they might, I don't want to say their go-tos, but people that they would, that they really liked working with. Mm. So that was kind of some of the differences. But they've both been in the industry for a long time and they certainly know what they're doing. So it's not, I wouldn't say one is better than the other at all, just different. And that's that was a lot of fun to see.
Yeah. Something just clicked in my brain about, like casting directors having their go-tos, and we always hear about like the rumored blacklist. But for actors just starting out, how, especially those of us who don't come from we don't have our people, right? Because you make your people in your schooling, or you make your people in your early career, and you're trying to build your people around you now through classes and stuff like that. How, or do you have any advice for newer actors or people coming at this later in life to make an impression? Good and bad.
Yeah, no, it's a great question. I mean, I don't have a blacklist. I actually don't think anyone really has a blacklist. Mm-hmm. I think that to make an impression, like anytime you have an audition, it's an opportunity to make an impression. So, treat those kind of like with like the respect and weight they should. I don't want to put like more pressure on anyone auditioning, but that is your calling card. You're as good as your last audition. I think that, we can all acknowledge as casting directors, we know, I know incredible actors who have just had bad auditions, and it doesn't mean I won't see them again. I just know that, they were having maybe a bad day or a bad week, or they didn't have time to prepare, or maybe this role doesn't sit well with them. So they don't feel comfortable kind of embodying it. So I think auditions are really important. I think that an actor's relationship with an agent is really important in terms of them pushing them at the appropriate time to be seen for a part. And an agent's relationship with casting is really important as well. There are, I would hope that I have a good relationship with every agent in the city, but there are certain agents whose opinion I really, truly value. So if they're telling me to take an extra look at this person, I probably will. But just logistically, it's so hard to accept every single push or every single recommendation, or else, we wouldn't get anything done. So that's also the struggle is, you're working on projects sometimes and you get hundreds of submissions for a role, and you're thinking like, how can I possibly whittle this down to a point that, I don't have anxiety about missing somebody, that, which is like a real thing. I worry that I'm like, well, what if I miss this act and they're perfect for it? So it can be stressful.
That is really interesting, because I think the same anxiety, as you would know, being an actor before, exists in the acting community, right? Like, oh, they're just going to watch the first 5 seconds of my tape, but the good, meaty stuff happened 40 seconds down the road, and they're going to miss how great I am. That's so interesting to hear, and I don't mean to be like, great, we all have anxiety, but it's so interesting to hear it from the other side. It's almost a relief, sorry. But to be like, oh, of course.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, it's, as I said, it's still a results-driven, profession. I still have to produce, so that stress is there. I'm just thankful it's not on me to to do the acting anymore. But no, I mean, watching self-tapes, it, that's pretty much become my evenings and weekends these days, is just watching self-tapes. Self-tapes.
And I know you get asked this all the time. What makes a self-tape stand out?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think like the short answer is like technically it needs to be good in terms of like at an industry standard. We're all doing self-tapes now, so you don't need to spend thousands of dollars on equipment, but you need to have decent lighting, a decent camera, a neutral backdrop, your camera at eye level. You really should have a reader. I know that it's become so tricky asking friends, family, neighbors, loved ones to be a reader, but that's really important. Making sure that the reader is standing on the other side of the actual microphone of whatever device you're using, so we don't hear the reader's voice booming. Follow whatever instructions casting is giving you in terms of slates and framing. That's really important. That's just the technical stuff, and that's just like, I want to say like the non-negotiable. Like that's kind of what's expected now from a good tape. And then to stand out, it is kind of, as we said before, showing me who you are as an actor. Show me your choices. Show me how you think. That's what I want to see. Yeah.
You cast a lot of really interesting projects and from different avenues of entertainment, right? Video game, voiceover, film, TV. What are the differences that you notice for each type? Like I know, as somebody who's done a lot of mocap training, like that type of audition is so different than a like film audition where there's so much movement versus not. Are there any other differences that are pretty stand out from each different entertainment avenue you work with?
Well, I mean, if we separate just like theater, like live performance from anything that's recorded, I think we kind of all know the difference between, maybe a more heightened sense of play and, awareness and a need and ability to fill a space if you're working like live performance. But I will say, like, for the most part, what I love about mocap and auditioning for video games is it is actually very, very, very similar to auditioning for film and TV, in the sense like you have a camera, which is a fixed point, and depending on the frame, you're either going to get a full body shot or a 3/4 like shoulder up shot. And what I love about it is that it is a bit more heightened. It isn't actually an element of like theater coming to play where the body needs to be active. But what happens a lot is we give kind of these instructions for our mocap auditions to keep the body alive, keep it moving. But what happens sometimes is people go like too far. They feel like their body always has to be doing something crazy. And if it's not justified in the text, it just looks weird. So there is something that has to maintain like alive. Just think of like an energy kind of flowing through you. And it's the same for the biggest thing as well as like the face. So, if you're doing a traditional like film and TV, audition, there's a stillness, there are people listening. The eye contact with the reader is really important. But if you ever played a video game with one of those characters and they're just like standing still, if their face isn't moving just a little bit, if they're not having that kind of like body flow through you, they look dead, and it doesn't play. So, if you are kind of interested in auditioning for video games, you have to play video games. You have to like just try it out and see like what this difference is. And really it's a bit more heightened is probably the best way I can say it. You're not trying to reach the person in the back row at the Stratford Festival, but you need to make sure that your body is alive. And so what's fun is a lot of the time, we're responding to actors with theater training, with movement training, clown experience, improv, who have a good sense of like their body. And so it allows me to see some really great actors too when I get to audition for video game stuff.
I will never forget the very first mocap class I ever took, and all they taught us for like an hour was how to stand with like subtle movement. And I remember thinking, I don't understand this. This is before I started playing a lot of video games. And then my sister, who's a big gamer, was like, well, yeah, if you're just standing really still, I'm going to like push the reset button because I think the video game froze.
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
Oh, it's nothing to do with performance. It's actual technical. the player is going to be like, excuse me, I'm pushing the A button. Are you moving?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's so interesting.
Totally.
So interesting. So cool. You do a ton of work, I've noticed, with diversity, inclusion. I know you have a BIPOC night. Can you tell me a bit more about that, what you've been working on?
Yeah. I guess where to begin? I think that I it's kind of twofold. So when I started working in casting, I just was very aware that, we're not, we're called gatekeepers as casting directors a lot of the time. I don't really love that term, but I understand where it comes from, that for some people we feel like we're a barrier or a point of entry into, the industry or an audition or booking a job. And I was aware that, with that type of position does come a fair amount of responsibility. And I wanted to just make sure that as a casting director working in the city of Toronto, that I had a good sense of, the talent that was out there, and to focus on providing opportunities for everybody. In order to do that, I also need to start knowing who they were as performers. And so that's kind of where, our monthly kind of workshop program came from. And we do it once a month, and it's still over Zoom, but it's an opportunity for people to kind of come and collect and learn from each other, and also learn from industry professionals and grow. And it gives me the opportunity to meet new faces, and that's what we're always doing as casting directors, is looking for new actors for new possibilities. So it was just really important to me. And then kind of, coincidentally at the same time, I just had some really fun projects that were coming my way from diverse writers, from actors of different lived experience than mine, that we connected and we had a mutual respect for. And I think that what's fun about this job is if you it's a small industry, so if you're working with really creative people and it goes well, then they recommend you to other people. And so that's kind of what happened, is we've had an opportunity to work on some really exciting projects with a focus on diversity, and then I try and take that into all the work that I do, because it's an important part of our industry, and it's an important part of the stories we tell. And I also just know that as a cis white man, I need to surround myself with people with different experiences, so that I can learn and grow and do a better job as a casting director.
That's great. Yeah. Do you have any favorite memories in your career?
Oh my goodness. Favorite memories. I think oh goodness. So as you know, we don't decide who gets cast. That's not our job. Our job is to put forward recommendations. And there's just been a couple of instances where I've put forward recommendations and they haven't been not accepted. They're like, yeah, this person's okay, or whatever it is, they're not right for the part. And I adamantly believe that they are right for the part. And I've only done it a couple of times, but where I've really fought for an actor because I think that they were the right person, and then they got the job, and then everyone's like, yes, they're the perfect person for it. It's just really rewarding, and it's very validating, for your own ego and your own self-esteem. Oh yeah, I can do this. I know what I'm doing. Every now and then, that's really fun. The joy of booking actors is always fun, and that never kind of goes away. Because I remember what the call was like when I would pick up my phone and it said agent. When the phone rang, it was that's a job, So that was always really exciting. I've been really, I really like to go see some of my films at festivals around the world, and that's been really fun to watch your work being screened by other people and sharing in the joy of these creators who poured their heart and soul into something and now are able to kind of watch the fruits of their labor on screen. So that's been great. I remember getting my very first video game, and I was like, oh my goodness, this is going to be so much fun. What are they thinking? So yeah, lots of great memories. It's been fun just kind of watching my team grow and people come in the office and go off to explore new avenues and really getting to collaborate with some really great people.
Do you have anything you're looking forward to coming up this year?
It's like early. I mean, we're working on a lot of really fun projects right now. There are a few like feature scripts which are in the works, and it's still probably early days to talk about it, but some really exciting stuff is coming. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Do you have any final words of wisdom or words of advice? I hate that question. Such a loaded question at the very end.
It's a good question. It's a good question. Yeah, I think that what I do a lot of like chats at theater schools and training programs, working with like young performers like entering the industry, and this is something that's always been very important to me. But it is like truly like watching out for your own like mental health. So the industry can feel like all consuming, and that all your energy needs to go into being an actor. And I would just argue that like you need to have a balanced lifestyle. It can't be everything for you. I want to see a well-rounded person who has lived experience, who might have traveled, who worked different jobs, to surround himself with different people, who will pick up a book and read, or who are able to take time off when they need to. Taking care of yourself mentally and physically is really important, and it will serve you in the long run. Surround yourself with people who aren't actors. Let them keep you grounded as well. Meet new people. Don't be afraid to take time off if you need to. Like, we're not going anywhere. People think they have to keep their foot on the gas all the time to get momentum. And yeah, you might lose a job or two, who knows? But you might come back actually like refreshed and ready to hit the ground running. This is from a personal experience too. The last 3 years, I haven't really had like a vacation. I was like, I can feel myself getting burnt out, and then I won't do a good job for my team or my clients or myself. And time off, relaxing, recharging is important. Find a hobby, like find something that takes you away, brings you to somewhere else, keeps you physically active. That's my big advice. Take care of yourself first and foremost.
So important. Do you mind if I ask you one more question? Because something you just said there.
I don't mind at all. Yeah.
So the biggest thing that, and I know I'm being a bit thinking of myself here.
Sure.
But it's what I've heard from other actors in similar situations to myself. So like, I didn't go to theater school. I didn't go to film school. I went to medical school. Yeah. And so there's this feeling of I'm behind and need to catch up, right? Because I don't have the connections. I don't have the training. I don't have the fancy diploma that says I went to this film school or theater school. And so there's always this feeling of needing to catch up, and I'm behind, and also, I'm older, right? But I think a lot of times what we forget is exactly what you said, is that everything that we've been doing in our lives is not, it's lived experience, right? That will contribute to our careers as actors in whatever way, shape, or form a career looks as somebody who wants to be an actor, whether it's community theater or whatever. There's a forgetting that everything we've been doing up until now is still important and can contribute. Yeah. Is there anything else that you've noticed, and I don't mean one is better than the other at all, between actors who've been only actors and did the theater school and actors who are doctors, lawyers, police chiefs who said, oh, now I want to do this, I'm going to try and do this? Are there any differences that you notice?
I mean, it's a really good question. I just like to backtrack. I think that you just mentioned something I think it's important to like flag, is that maybe a second piece of advice I would have for people is like, you can't compare yourself to others, and like we do it all the time, and it's not healthy. So in terms of, that someone else is ahead or behind or whatever it is, it's, for me, that's just a matter of perspective. And like you are where you are right now. There are things you can do in terms of taking classes or, working on your home self-tape setup or, expanding your community. Like there are things you can do, but you can't like catch up to someone who's been on their own path. So it's just like, it's just reminding, like, and it's stuff I've dealt with too, like very actively, like, oh, I feel like I should be somewhere else right now. It's like, you are where you are right now. So you can either kind of accept that or freak out if there's nothing you can do about it, and that's not healthy. So just loop back on that. To answer your question, I know actors who have, spent their entire lives in training classes, theater school, film school, whatever it is. And then I know actors who've done no training at all. And you can have actors in both camps that are brilliant and actors in both camps that are maybe less than brilliant. I just don't. Some people just kind of have that thing, and whether their thing took them to a school when they were younger or not. I think that, kind of going back to what I was saying earlier, the greatest kind of power and gift you have is the awareness of who you are as a person and what that is going to bring to the role. So yeah, if you were a cop for 20 years and now you want to try acting, cool. You've got some lived experience you can tap into. Now, whether you're able to tap into it in a way that can be, repeated for 4 or 5 takes, maybe you need some training on that, or just a general awareness of how a set works. But I think that's what's kind of fun about our industry, is we can kind of be a catch-all for everybody. And you might have just a different trajectory, a different timeline, but if you're comfortable with going at your own pace, still challenging yourself, still trying to learn and grow, but being content with where you're at, I think that will serve you better than trying to catch up or compare or wish you had gone to school X, Y, or Z.
Thank you, everyone, for tuning in, and thank you, Jesse, for being my guest this week. Thank you so much for taking the time out of, I know, your very busy schedule and sharing all your incredible knowledge about the world of casting and advice for us actors, especially as second act actors. A lot of us who are just starting out, I really, really appreciate you. Thank you, everyone, for listening to episode 60. As I said, tomorrow is my 1-year anniversary of podcasting. If you are following me and Second Act Actors on social media, please join us tomorrow, that's Saturday, at 11 a.m. Eastern Time. I am going live with Madeline DeCorso. Madeline DeCorso was my guest on episode 1. So 1 year ago, tomorrow, that's when the first episode came out. So we are going to recap everything that has happened to us in this past year, and it's been a pretty exciting year. So a little homework for you. Take a listen to episode 1. Oh God, guys, episode 1. Seems like so long ago. Take a listen, get to know Madeline, and I hope you'll join us tomorrow. So that's Saturday, 11 a.m. Eastern Time. We're going live on Instagram, Madeline and I. We're going to catch up. Please join us. Thank you again for listening, and I hope you'll tune in next week for another episode, starting year 2. Thank you for joining me. Bye.